You're with Julian on the brand note, a review of F1, aka Formula One, starring Brad Pitt. I think Joseph Kosinski is a very interesting director, to be honest. He did Tron Legacy, which was beautiful to look at, great to listen to, not a particularly good film, but it was actually quite stunning on an aesthetic level. And then he did Oblivion, which was another one, high concept, stunning on many levels. It lost its way narratively a lot, but I've still got a lot of respect for that. That also looked amazing. For me, the high point was Only the Brave. I think there are an entire raft of these blue-collar, disaster-ish sort of films, like, what was the one on the oil rig disaster? It wasn't Event Horizon, that's a different film. But the one about the oil rig, Only the Brave was about the firefighters that got caught in a wildfire. Amazing film, terrific stuff. And then he did Top Gun Maverick, so he's obviously got a lot of leeway now with what he makes. Spiderhead, I think, was a streaming-only film that didn't get very good reviews, but he's back with Formula One, or F1, with Brad Pitt at the helm, and it's done quite well. It's a film that is entirely based on cliches. There isn't one single bone in its body that isn't a cliche, not one character, not one exchange, not one relationship. And I kind of love it. It's a remake of one of the greatest sports films of all time called The Natural, starring Robert Redford, who is analogous to Brad Pitt, let's face it. In that film, Robert Redford is an up-and-coming superstar, a generational talent that never even gets over the first hurdle. He is horrifically injured, never achieves any potential, and disappears from the sport for decades before coming back to help the lowest ranked team. And that's what happens in this film. Brad Pitt is a wannabe Formula One ace, and they mix the real world of real footage and real drivers such as Ayrton Senna. He crashes whilst he's trying to overtake Ayrton Senna, who Ayrton Senna actually did die on the track. But he ends up with horrific injuries and leaving the sport behind and driving around in his bus, doing these ad hoc one-race events where he still has great driving ability. Javier Bardem turns up, his ex-combatant as a driver from years ago, and Javier Bardem wants him to come to his Formula One team. Of course, all of this is ludicrous, but the reason for Javier Bardem is his team has not scored a single point in 3 years, and he wants he will lose the company. After 3 years, if they haven't scored a point, then the board of directors have a caveat to remove him, and he will lose something like $300 million. So he tries to get Brad Pitt to come on with the new driver, who is Damson Idris, who's a hotshot young driver but has no mental capacity and no maturity. So he tries to bring in this old hand to balance the team out and hopefully score a couple of points. And that's one thing I really liked about it. I cannot stand these sports movies where the person comes in and Brad Pitt wins every race and becomes world champion. That's not what happens. He comes in to help his teammate get 10th place and score the team's first point. And they, between them over the course of the season, scrape together a few points to allay this team collapsing. And we also get... I love Kerry Condon. She's got one of the best voices out there. She was in Banshees of Inisherin, and also from being Robert Downey Jr.'s voice of reason after Vision left. She was a new voice in his head as Iron Man. And she's been in quite a few things. I thought she was superb in Land of Saints and Sinners, a very slept-on recent Liam Neeson film, which was excellent. And she's the director of the technical side of the team. This is very old-fashioned. It doesn't have any sort of nod to modern proclivities on race or gender or anything. It's just a bog-standard, cliche-driven sports film. In fact, they actually take it a little bit close to the nose by the fact that Kerry Condon, who is the first female technical director in Formula One, jumped straight into bed with Brad Pitt. It's like, could you have not done that. But anyway, everyone in it is so charming. Damon Idris is great. Javier Bardem's great. And Brad Pitt is absolutely superstar charisma as the classic hangdog Brad Pitt, taciturn, doesn't give you much, always super cool. And another thing I really love about it is if you've watched Fast and the Furious films and all those car films, they're so over the top on CGI that it's brain melting and you can't even look at the screen. It's just garbage. They did that racing game one, Gran Turismo or something, and it was so CGI. What they've done here is a very clever CGI, which is they used real footage of Formula One and green screened a car. So they've actually got the ability to project the Brad Pitt car in amongst dozens of other Formula One cars. And the races are really well done. A lot of crystal clear daylight scenes in this. Great crashes. And, you know, they pay a nod to the credibility of what's happening in the Formula One world and the parameters of what causes the races to be won and lost. Another thing I loved about it is how much they cheat. They cheat all the way through the movie. Not cheating per se. They basically use each other as teammates. So one will go out and hold up the rest of the track for as long as possible to enable the other one to come in striking distance and so on. So they use every trick in the book. You know everything that's going to happen in this film. If you've seen The Natural, you know everything that's going to happen in this film. I just found it so enjoyable to watch. It's ridiculously long, 2.5 hours. But it's so enjoyable. Everyone's good. Everyone's on their A game. It looks fantastic. And none of the characters are annoying. They're all good fun. Brad is excellent. And it's the kind of film you can rewatch because it's just absolute hokum. But absolute top tier hokum. So I'm going to give F1 I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.